Have you ever found yourself staring at a piece of modern art and just thinking, what in the world am I looking at? Well, today we're going to dive into why art got so, weird in the 20th century. And we'll see how those strange, chaotic canvases were actually a powerful and maybe even necessary answer to a world that felt like it was falling apart.
So let me just start with this question. How do you paint a feeling? What does anxiety actually look like? Not on someone's face, but, splashed across a canvas with paint. That's the exact problem artists in the 20th century found themselves staring down. And this right here is the heart of it all. The old world, with all its familiar rules for art and for society, it just shattered. And when your reality completely breaks, the tools you use to describe it have to break too. Art didn't really have a choice. It had to reinvent itself from the ground up. Okay, so to really get the art, we first have to get the crisis that sparked this whole revolution. Let's set the stage for a moment. I mean, just think about the sheer amount of change here. In just a couple of decades, society got completely turned upside down. You had rapid industrialization pulling people into these huge, crowded, and kind of alienating cities. At the exact same time, you had thinkers like Freud telling us about this whole hidden world inside our own heads, the subconscious. And then, bam, 2 world wars. The old style of art, the realistic pretty paintings, it just couldn't capture this new reality of anxiety, uncertainty, and fragmentation. It just wasn't enough anymore. So what was the first real answer to all this chaos? Well, it was a movement that decided to stop looking outward at the world and start looking inward. This was the beginning of Expressionism. Expressionism basically just said, hey, forget trying to paint a perfect landscape. That's just the surface. The real goal was to paint the feeling of that landscape. It was this radical move away from showing objective reality and a full-on dive into expressing our subjective inner emotional worlds. And this comparison just nails the difference, doesn't it? Realism paints what your eye sees. A tree looks like a tree. A person looks like a person. Simple. But Expressionism? It tries to paint what the soul feels. It's not about being accurate, it's all about being emotionally true. So, how'd they actually do it? Well, they built a whole new visual language. They made these intense emotions like fear, despair, loneliness the main subject. They distorted reality on purpose, with twisted figures and unnatural colors, not because they couldn't draw, but because they wanted to show what psychological instability looked like. They used these really powerful symbols, like buildings tilting over, to show a society that felt like it was collapsing. Okay, so this quote here is describing a student's painting inspired by the movement. Just try to picture it. One single person, totally dwarfed by a city that looks like it's literally caving in on itself, all under this angry, blood-red sky. And this is the key. That painting isn't just a picture of a city. It's a picture of what it feels like to be totally lost and alone in a massive modern world. That's Expressionism in a nutshell, making an internal feeling visible for everyone to see. But that was really just the beginning. After artists explored our conscious feelings, the next big wave decided to go even deeper into the strange, totally illogical world of the subconscious mind. So let's talk about Surrealism. The Surrealists were completely fascinated by the new ideas coming from Sigmund Freud. They had this belief that our rational, everyday minds were kind of like prisons for our creativity. So their mission was to bust out, unlock the subconscious, and explore the bizarre, fantastic logic that you only find in dreams. And the ways they did this were pretty wild. They created these unforgettable dreamlike images. I mean, everyone knows Salvador Dali's melting clocks, right? They would smash together unexpected things to just shock you out of your normal logical thinking. They even did stuff like automatic writing, where they just let words flow onto a page without thinking, trying to tap directly into that hidden creative source. Here's another cool example, this time a surrealist poem. Just listen to the imagery here. Melting clocks, a bird swimming through glass clouds, shadows that laugh. It's weird, it's beautiful, and it makes absolutely no logical sense. And that's exactly the point. Surrealism isn't supposed to make rational sense. It's trying to capture the way our minds work when we're dreaming, where one strange image just freely connects to another, creating its own kind of weird emotional logic. All right, so art has explored our feelings and our subconscious. But what happens when the very idea of a single, stable reality starts to crumble? Well, The next step wasn't just to change what was in the picture, but to shatter the frame itself. And that brings us to modernism and postmodernism. So if Expressionism and Surrealism were about the content of art, modernism was all about its form. After the absolute devastation of World War I, there was this deep feeling that everything, religion, government, society, morality, had completely failed. The old stories just didn't work anymore. So, modernist artists and writers started experimenting. They told stories all out of order. They focused on characters who felt profoundly alone and isolated from the world. They tried to show how identity itself was becoming fragmented in this new, chaotic age. This description of a modernist photo is a perfect visual for this idea. Think about it. The blur of the crowd rushing past, these massive, impersonal buildings, and then that one single person standing perfectly still in the middle of it all. It's just a powerful metaphor for feeling anonymous and lost in the modern city. Now, this table really helps us see the shift from modernism to postmodernism. The easiest way to think about it is this. Modernism saw a broken world and was desperately trying to find a new meaning to hold on to. Postmodernism came along later and asked, wait a second, what if there isn't any big, universal meaning to find at all? It's way more playful, it's ironic, and it loves to just mix everything together, high and low culture, and question the very idea that there's one single truth. So, after all this chaos, this distortion, this fragmentation, why does any of this weird art actually matter? Well, it all comes down to seeing art as a deeply, deeply human response. Look, these artists weren't just bored and trying new things for the fun of it. Expressionism, Surrealism, Modernism, these were necessary inventions. They were essential tools the people created to process trauma, to navigate anxiety, and to try and make some kind of sense of a world that just didn't make sense anymore. And that's really the whole journey in a nutshell. First, you have to admit the old rules are broken. Then you look inward for emotional truth. That's Expressionism. Then you dig even deeper into the subconscious. That's Surrealism. And finally, with modernism, you shatter the very form of art itself to mirror a broken reality. And this whole journey leaves us with a really fascinating question for today. Those artists, they had to forge brand new languages to respond to the crises of their century. So when you look at our world now, with all of its own unique challenges, what new languages are the artists of our time creating right now? And what are those languages going to tell future generations about us?